He suspected his maid was stealing from him. For 3 weeks, he watched her sneak out with bags she didn't bring in. So one night, he followed her, ready to catch her in the act. What he discovered left him speechless. Andrew Terry was 36 years old and owned half of Chicago. He noticed everything, every number, every detail, every inconsistency, except the woman who raised him. Her name was Elizabeth. She'd been with his family since he was 2. When his mother died, Elizabeth held him through the nightmares. When his father broke down, she kept the house standing. She loved him when no one else could. But Andrew never asked about her life, never wondered where she went at night. She was just there, quiet, faithful, invisible, until 3 weeks ago. Andrew noticed Elizabeth leaving his building at night carrying 2 heavy bags she didn't arrive with that morning. It kept happening. Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, same bags, same time. His mind went dark. She's taking something. He ran an inventory check. His office, his pantry, his safe. Nothing missing. But those bags kept appearing, and the question burned, what's she hiding? So on a rainy Thursday night, Andrew decided to follow her. He left work early, parked down the block, waited. When Elizabeth walked out, coat pulled tight, bags weighing her down, Andrew's chest tightened. Tonight he'd know the truth. She took the bus south, deep into neighborhoods his company owned, blocks he'd renovated and priced families out of. She got off at 63rd Street, turned down an alley behind an old church, paint peeling, windows dark. Elizabeth knocked. The door opened, light spilled out. Andrew waited, then followed her down. The basement was full of people, homeless men, tired mothers, kids in thin coats, all eating soup from paper plates. And there was Elizabeth, hair down, old sweater, standing at a stove serving food, calling people by name, smiling like Andrew had never seen. A young man stepped up. "Miss Elizabeth, you got cornbread?" "Made it fresh, Marcus." She handed him 2 pieces wrapped in foil. A little girl tugged her sleeve. "Where does the food come from?" Elizabeth knelt down. "I make it with love, baby, so you grow strong." Andrew couldn't breathe. Those bags weren't stolen. They were given. Elizabeth was using her own money, her small paycheck, to feed people who had nothing, people his company had pushed out. She could have asked him for help, but she didn't. Because after 34 years, she'd decided something about him. She didn't trust him with her mercy. Andrew stumbled back up the stairs. Rain hit his face. He waited 2 hours in his car. When Elizabeth finally came out, empty bags, slow steps, Andrew rolled down his window. "Elizabeth." She turned. No surprise, just quiet sadness. "Get in." She did. They drove in silence. Then Andrew's voice cracked. "How long?" Elizabeth stared out the window. 17 years. Since my daughter died. He'd sent flowers to that funeral, never asked how she died. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him. "What would you have done? Made it about you?" Her voice was soft but sharp. "I wanted them to stay human, not your charity case." Something broke inside Andrew's chest. He drove her to a small house on the south side, walked her to the door. Inside, he saw a frame on the wall, a military medal, the Bronze Star, awarded to Sergeant Elizabeth M. Hart for saving 17 lives in Desert Storm. The woman who made his tea every morning was a war hero, and he never knew. Before we go on, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from. Because God brought this story to you today, maybe to open your eyes, maybe to heal something broken. Stay with me. What happens next will change everything. Andrew didn't go home that night. He sat in his car outside Elizabeth's house until the sun started to rise. Rain had stopped. The city was quiet, and all he could see was that medal on her wall. 17 lives. She'd saved 17 lives. And he'd never asked her a single question about who she was. When he finally drove back to his penthouse, the sun was breaking over Lake Michigan. The building let him in like it always did, gates opening, lights adjusting, elevator waiting. But this time, it all felt different, cold, empty, like a machine pretending to be a home. Andrew stood at his window looking out at the skyline. His skyline, buildings with his name carved into steel, towers that reshaped the city. But what had he really built? He thought about Elizabeth. 34 years. She'd been there his whole life. He remembered being 7 years old, standing at his mother's funeral in a suit that didn't fit right. His father couldn't even look at him. The grief was too much. But Elizabeth, she stood beside Andrew the whole time, held his hand, let him cry into her coat when no one else would. He remembered being 12, struggling with math homework at the kitchen table. His father was traveling again. The house felt too big, too quiet. Elizabeth sat with him, didn't understand the equations, but she stayed anyway, made him hot chocolate, told him he was smart enough to figure it out. He remembered being 17, the night before he left for college. She packed his bags, ironed his shirts. And when he came downstairs with his suitcase, she hugged him, the only real hug he'd gotten in years, and whispered, "Make me proud." And he had. He'd built an empire, made millions, put the Terry name on half of Chicago. But he'd never once asked if she was proud, never asked what she needed, never asked if she was okay. The realization sat in his chest like a stone. Andrew heard the front door open, soft footsteps in the hallway. Elizabeth was here, same time as always, quiet, faithful. He turned from the window and walked toward the kitchen. She was setting out his breakfast, coffee, toast, fruit cut into perfect pieces, the same routine she'd done for decades. But this morning, Andrew saw her differently. Her hands were thin, worn, hands that had served soup to strangers last night, hands that had saved lives in a war. "Good morning, Mr. Terry," she said softly, not looking up. "Elizabeth." She paused. Something in his voice made her glance at him. "Are you feeling all right, sir?" Andrew wanted to say so many things. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to ask her why she never told him, but the words caught in his throat. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "Just didn't sleep well." Elizabeth nodded, poured his coffee, set the cup down gently. And Andrew realized something that made his stomach turn. She was still calling him sir, still moving carefully around him like he was someone to serve, not someone to trust. After everything, after raising him, loving him, holding his broken pieces together, she still didn't feel safe enough to be honest with him. He'd done that, built that wall between them without even knowing it. Elizabeth turned to leave, and Andrew's voice stopped her. "Elizabeth." She turned back. "Yes, Mr. Terry?" He looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger, a woman with a whole life he knew nothing about, a hero the world forgot, a mother who'd buried her daughter, a soldier who'd bled for her country, and he'd reduced her to someone who made his coffee. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "for everything." Elizabeth's face softened, just for a moment. Then she nodded. "Of course, sir." She walked out, and Andrew stood there alone in his perfect kitchen, in his perfect penthouse, in his perfect empire, and felt like the poorest man alive. He pulled out his phone, opened his calendar, meetings, conference calls, investment reviews, his whole day mapped out in 15-minute blocks, but none of it mattered. Andrew closed the calendar, opened his notes, and typed one question: "Who is Elizabeth Hart?" It was the first honest question he'd asked in 34 years, and he had no idea what the answer would cost him. Andrew couldn't focus. He sat in his office on the 72nd floor, staring at a contract worth $40 million. The words blurred together. All he could think about was Elizabeth. His assistant knocked. "Mr. Terry? The investors from New York are online too. Tell them I'll call back." She blinked. "But you scheduled this call 3 weeks ago." "I said I'll call back." She left quietly. Andrew leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. 17 lives. Elizabeth had saved 17 lives in a war, and he didn't even know she'd served. He opened his laptop, typed her name into the search bar. Elizabeth Hart, Desert Storm. Nothing came up. Just a few generic military records, a list of Bronze Star recipients from 1991. Her name was there, Sergeant Elizabeth M. Hart, but no story, no article, no recognition. The world had forgotten her, just like he had. Andrew shut the laptop, grabbed his coat, Told his assistant he was leaving for the day. It's only 11:30, sir. I know what time it is. He drove south, back to 63rd Street, back to that neighborhood he'd only seen in development reports and profit projections. In daylight, it looked different. Older women sat on porches, kids played in empty lots, a man fixed a car on the street. People lived here, real people, not statistics, not obstacles to progress. Andrew parked near the church, the one with peeling paint and boarded windows. In the daylight, it looked even more forgotten. A sign out front read, "Community Hope Center, all welcome." He walked around back, down those same concrete steps. The basement door was unlocked. Inside, it was empty, quiet. Just folding tables stacked against the wall and a small kitchen in the corner. The smell of soup still lingered in the air. Andrew stood there, trying to imagine Elizabeth in this space, serving food, smiling at strangers, calling them by name. "Can I help you?" Andrew turned. A young man stood in the doorway. Same military jacket from last night. Marcus. "I was just—" Andrew stopped. "I was looking around." Marcus studied him. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You were here last night, standing in the doorway." Andrew nodded. "You're the developer, right? The one who owns half the buildings around here." "I am." Marcus crossed his arms. "So, what are you doing here?" Andrew didn't know how to answer that. "I'm trying to understand something." "Understand what?" "Elizabeth, the woman who runs this place." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Miss Elizabeth? She doesn't run it. She just shows up. Been coming every week for years. Feeds us, talks to us, treats us like we matter." "How long have you known her?" 3 years, since I came back from Afghanistan." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I was living on the streets, couldn't hold down a job, kept having episodes. Flashbacks. Nobody wanted to deal with it." He walked over to the kitchen, touched the counter like it was sacred. "Miss Elizabeth found me sleeping behind